Fellow Africans, while we are speaking about the creation of a federal government of Africa through the organization called the People's Movement for African Unity, I would like to use this opportunity to be a little bit analytical about the project or concerning the federal government of Africa that is imminent. Some people may question, and it's a legitimate question, when you say, of what good will the federal government of Africa be to the people of Africa? Some people will ask this question with pessimistic view. Some will ask it with optimistic view. And whichever view you have on it does not necessarily matter, but matters the most. I say it doesn't matter, but matters the most because what happens in the world is coming from above. And when the above decide, they decide for the best reason. So any explanation somebody may give you may sometimes not be satisfying, as well as it can also be satisfying, depending on how you as a person understands it. So what is the benefit of an African federation, we may ask? Because we are living in Africa today that is very much in disorder. If, for example, the federal government of Nigeria cannot live in peace and in harmony with its citizens, you go to Ethiopia, it's a federated state. But whether it is federated, whether the countries are federated or just ordinary, normal, unitary system of government does not matter. What matters is the condition of life of the people of Africa, the component people that make up the nation. Are they living in peace? The answer is no, so far. So what do you think will encourage us into believing that a federal government of the entire Africa will make a difference? And why? And like I said, the answer I may give concerning why may not be satisfying to you. And it may not be necessarily giving you that, because we all are part of it. The only thing some of you don't know now is how the future of Africa will be. The future of Africa has been introduced through the People's Movement for African Unity will be. But we are already aware of the condition of the current Africa that is not serving is not satisfying the great expectations of its people for several reasons that all of you also know. So what is the benefit of an African federation? Now listen. There are 3 steps that will be taken for the benefit of black man. The first step, I describe it as freedom, total freedom. The second step, I describe it as unity. And then the third step is harmony. Before we go into the never-ending process of self-regeneration. Now, in explaining this, I start with the first one, which I call freedom. If you don't have freedom, you cannot benefit from that very unity. Because the forces that are destabilizing the already established nations, which don't have their total freedom, but which are continues to be controlled by the imperialist forces, means that they cannot enjoy themselves. If we don't have the freedom, just as they don't have the freedom, the federation also will not equally be enjoyable. So the first step for us is total freedom. And I'm using this opportunity to let you know that Africa is growing from stage to stage. We had existed in the stage of tribal government or ethnic governments. From there, we came to what we have now as national governments. And from there, we are hoping to go into the federation. So when the ethnic governments are there, we are there, they were overtaken by the forces of imperialism. And when they were there, each of the ethnicities, I'm using an example here from Ghana because I'm speaking from Ghana. But it's the same reality with all the African nations. In Ghana, there were different ethnic nationalities. Each of the nationalities have their kings, which were not capable of liberating their people from imperialist rule. Because, for example, in Ghana, we have the Ashanti Kingdom, we have the Ewe Kingdom, we have the Frafra Kingdom, we have all these ethnic kingdoms. None of them have the capacity on its own. And none of them want to give way for anyone to be able to liberate the country from direct colonization, because whosoever liberates will end up becoming the dominant power. So every of the king, he was looking for a means to liberate his own people from imperialist grip. The Ashanti Kingdom is looking for a means to get his own people back under his control. The same with Ewe Kingdom, the same with the Ga Kingdom. And the Ashanti Kingdom know he cannot go to be the ruler of the Ewe Kingdom. The Ewe Kingdom know he cannot be the ruler of the Ga people because they will not accept it. So who will take the lead? Nobody. And while the need to bring their efforts together to fight for freedom was there, they acknowledged it, but they couldn't do it because of these little differences. But when it was time for the spiritual world to liberate Africa, and like I always say, everything comes from the spiritual world, they inspired national minds. I take example here from Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah, we all know is from the Akan tribe. But when he was coming to work for Ghana, he did not come as a representative of the Akan people. He came in the name of the nation of Ghana, because the life was evolving beyond the tribal level onto a nation-state level, which is an advancement. So while the traditional leaders are looking at pulling life back into the tribal, the ethnic level where they are capable of controlling, the life was evolving beyond their mind. So they could not do anything until the spiritual world prepared a mind that is there for the nation. The mind that was there for the level of the development of the time. They came and get it done, starting from Kwame Nkrumah. Nelson Mandela of South Africa was born a Xhosa. He did not come in the name of the Xhosa people. He came as a South African. Jacob Zuma, Thabo Mbeki, Govan Mbeki, Walter Sisulu, Albert Lutuli, and all the people who fought there. They came in the name of South Africa, not in the name of the ethnicities, because life has gone beyond the ethnicity. And the Zulu king wanted to have everything his own, under his own. The Sutu people want to have their people under their own. They couldn't do anything until that very generation were inspired for the national level. So they come and get it done. Same it is everywhere. There's no need to make a lot of elaborations. Today, life has evolved beyond national level, just like it had evolved beyond tribal level. And while our African presidents acknowledge the importance of uniting Africa, they cannot do it because none of them is willing to give space. Because their mind also was made for national duty. And just as life was evolving beyond the attainment of the tribal kings, life today in Africa has evolved beyond what the national government and their leaders can control. This is the reason why our leaders are not able to unite Africa. And they can never do it even in the next 1 million years. But like I say, everything is controlled from the spiritual world. Just like the spiritual world prepared the mind that are made for nationalities away from the tribes and introduced them, they get the job done. Now it is time that the spiritual world have decided that Africa must unite. So they create a mind that is adequate for that African unity to be established as a federation. Right now, we're no longer talking about African national government. We're talking about federal government of the entire Africa. So the mind for the federation has to be created. And for us to be free from the grip of imperialism and neocolonialism that we are suffering today, we need to abandon nationalities Just the same way the tribalism was abandoned to establish the nation. Now the nations has to be abandoned to be able to get the final freedom. The first freedom was achieved. Now we are heading to the final freedom. And then somebody may ask, the national government was not able to achieve the federation, the freedom in its totality. So how can the federation achieve it? Now listen. Like you know, everything is working according to divine plan for the evolution of the world. Whatever goes out does not come back. Africa today can no longer go back to the tribal level because the national leaders have solved that. So the national government are in control of everything. Today, the federation, national government had achieved the first level because there were 2 steps towards total liberation of Africa and everywhere in the world, according to divine plan. The first step was already carried out by the independent generation. So this very step now is the final step, because the first step achieved a half independence. Now we came into the era of neo-colonialism. After direct colonization, we came into the era of neo-colonialism. So the federal government of Africa will be established now to bring the power of African people to be able to get themselves totally out of anything that has to do with imperial control. That is the final step. That is the benefit of the federation, to bring our power together. And over the years, we've spoken about African unity. And somebody can ask if Nkrumah, great men like Nkrumah and the Secretariat could not achieve African unity. Why do I think that a small man like me will come with an idea to achieve African unity? Because I'm not a president, I'm not a son of a rich man. But I want to use this opportunity to tell you that God does not work the way man does. If you look at the history of all our freedom fighters, none of them were great men. They became great after achieving their objectives. Kwame Nkrumah couldn't even buy his daily bread very well. The same with Nelson Mandela. The same with Robert Mugabe. All our people, our heroes all over the world. And it's not only Africa. Even Joseph Stalin. These people are not always educated people. They are not always the prominent people you give respect in the society. They are the leadership of significant level. There are 2 types of leadership. There is the leadership that overhauls, that makes a total overhaul in a society. And then there is leadership of intellectual management of the society. When the spiritual world want to overhaul a society for a grand advancement, they introduce people who they mentor specially for that and introduce them into the system to go and change it. After changing it, now there comes the time of intellectual management of the established system. So if you look at the people who achieved many things in the world, they came like that. So don't denigrate it when I'm talking about African unity. Most of you think it's about the president, it's about the millionaire, or how much you have, or how much you're educated, are you a professor, or this and that. It's not like that. God doesn't work that way. Inspirations don't come that way. It does not mean that the African president or the intellectuals are useless. It all depends on the type of spirit and the idea that is identifying with every individual. And when we're talking about God in human life, God is in human life or in political development is nothing more than idea. God is not a chicken that will come and fall here. God is about the idea that it gives an individual on how to get things done. That is just what God means. It doesn't mean that the individual you hear their name in history are physically the most powerful or the most intellectually gifted. It's all about the mission they come to carry in the world. And it's all about the type of spirit and idea that is identifying with those people. That's what makes the difference. Some people are made to introduce the idea. Some people are made to carry it on. Some people are made to do both. So that is the primary thing to focus on about the African Federation, that it is a means to bring our power together to achieve the last level of our freedom. Because the ethnicities that make all the nations had to bring themselves together to be able to achieve the first level. Like in South Africa, the Zulu, the Xhosa, the Pedi, all of them come. In Ghana here, the Ewe, the Ga, all of them come. You go to Kenya, the same thing. You go to Nigeria, the Hausa man, the Yoruba man, the Igbo man, Benin people, everybody begin to put their effort together, and then they were able to achieve the first level of freedom, which means that Africa was no longer under direct colonization. So this last level of colonization means that Africans have to bring themselves together, and doing that will be through the federal government of Africa that I'm speaking about. At this very stage, there is nothing remains. Everything about African unity is already complete. We are a free people. Now, everything is complete. The only thing we do now is to implement them. That is why I'm speaking here to you, telling you to go to our website, www.pmau.org, and see what we have put in place. And from there, get yourself involved into the project.